the meeting to order. Will you please stand for the pledge and remain standing for the invocation? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic
for which
one nation, under God,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice.
liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have our invocation by Dr. Bobby Brewer from North Chapel Bible Church. Hi, welcome.
Well, let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for the opportunity to assemble here. And Lord, I thank you so much for our town council and the sacrifices they have made to their family and their businesses to serve our community, Lord, and pray that you bless them for doing that. Lord, we pray for your wisdom from on high for this particular session, Lord. I pray that you give guidance, give wisdom, and Lord, we pray for harmony and a spirit of kindness even on those topics where there may be some disagreement, Lord. And Father, we continue to say thank you for our town and pray that you protect our town, protect our nation, and we thank you for the privilege it is to live here. And Lord, we just collectively, we pray for the eradication of and a cure for COVID-19. And we love you, we praise you, thank you for the blessing and the beauty of our town and our community. It's in Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mayor Dickey.
Here.
Vice Mayor Charnow.
Here.
Councilmember Tolas.
Here.
Councilmember Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Magazine.
Here.
Councilmember Lacrone.
Present.
Councilmember Spellich.
Present.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. It's nice to have at least some people here with us tonight, and thanks for being on the phone and anybody that's watching online or on Channel 11. I wanted to mention real quick that item 8F will be postponed till June 2nd, and we'll get to the reports by the town manager and council people and mayor. Grady, do you have anything?
Just briefly, I wanted to remind the council and the public that as of yesterday, town staff returned back to town hall. We officially reopened to our residents and also the community center. Community center is going to have more or less more restricted, limited access, but it will be available to the public for drop-ins and for trying to reschedule activities. And town hall here, as you probably came in, you noticed that we had social distancing reminder signs and also floor placards to distance people. And tonight, as you know, at the council meeting, we also have instituted that and sanitary conditions to improve the safety. We also put in some extra measures for our employees to make sure that they feel safe and secure while they're back at work. So that's all I had to report.
Thank you, Grady. Council, have anything, Mike? No? No? Anybody on the phone have anything you'd like to report?
Mayor, it's Dave.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
It's Dave.
Yes, hi, David. Go ahead, sorry.
I just briefly wanted to touch upon the fact that last week, May 10th through the 16th, was National Police Week. In 1962, President John F. Kennedy proclaimed May 15th as National Police Officers Memorial Day. This particular year, 307 names were to be added to the wall of officers that were killed in the line of duty. And COVID put a damper on the memorial service that was to be held out there. I was actually going to go out there this year for it. And so I just wanted to thank all the men and women of law enforcement for their work and recognize them for last week, National Police Week. That's it.
Thank you, Councilman. Anybody else? I have a few things to talk about. The emergency declaration that we had, I think it was the 13th, so that was the 6th. And when we do those, we're incorporating, of course, the governor's executive orders. They continue to guide people to use the CDC website, because the thing that I think is good about that, among other things, is that it differentiates between the different industries. So there's really specific advice, like for here, we were giving out the masks, and we all have our little sanitizer, 80%. I think it only has to be 50, but we have good ones there. The numbers are on the right track. I think most of us are probably looking at the Arizona Department of Health every day after 9 o'clock. The new numbers come out. Sometimes some of them look a little alarming because it's from one day to the next. But frankly, they've been spread out. They've been adding some that have been happening all along. The other, as far as people that have passed away, but also the idea of the cases seem like they're getting pretty large on some of those days, 400 or so. But again, they've been really pushing the testing a lot. So I think that number just by itself isn't as alarming as it may seem. There's more cases because they're doing a lot more testing. One of the things that I look at a lot, with my daughter-in-law being an ER nurse and then my son being a fire in Scottsdale, is the number of hospitalizations, and that is really going on a pretty good trajectory right now, going down. So I'm anxious to see with all of you how this opening up will affect the numbers in the next week or so, this positive trajectory that we've been on. And as always, we ask everybody to continue with their individual responsibilities. We all know that we're operating for the benefit of our neighbors and our visitors. I've been working with James for an economic development, and with Grady, we created a health and business resource sheet. It's on our website, and we've got more to come on that in the next couple of weeks, hopefully with some good news on what we can do for some of our businesses. We continue to rely on that, azdhs.gov, CDC, and of course our website, fh.az.gov, and also please to email any of us, or Grady, or to call us. And if we don't know anything, we'll try to get you in the right direction. Had a virtual Canadian Arizona Business Council meeting. They are very busy getting their businesses back on track. They're also very active in the medical field, and excited about the new trade agreement, which has been called the new NAFTA. I don't know if that's right or not, but it's a great agreement between our three nations, Canada, Mexico, and the U.S. So it's good to hear positive things like that. We had our Greater Phoenix Economic Council meeting. They're on the move as well, as you can imagine. We quarterly meet, they meet with us, mayors and county supervisors. Of course, that was virtual too. So a lot of talk about the CARES Act, and I bring this up because as a town that's under 500,000 population, we have had a little difficulty accessing about $1.9 billion, which was part of that initial CARES Act. Some of that was in the state of Arizona was distributed, but there was still that left. They're really, we're all in the same boat here, except for Phoenix, Maricopa County, and Tucson. We're all under 500,000. So we have been unable to apply or to access that, which kind of goes together with what we were talking about, trying to do some stuff for the businesses or the individuals who might be having difficulties here in town. You look at some of these cities and you see things that they're able to set up. We're not quite there yet with that, though I do understand, and maybe later we'll get a report that the governor's reaching out to mayors on that. Mayor Gallego expressed our appreciation to GPEC because they have been advocating to our federal delegation to try to get resources with populations under the 500,000 and to also get some flexibility. And we are asking them to come on board with the next bill also that they've been talking about that we know is in the works right now. The League of Cities and Towns is actively petitioning the governor to allow us as cities to participate in the distribution formula. And maybe that's why the governor, I heard that he'd be reaching out today. They also sent letters, the League, to the federal delegation about that next bill, asking Senator McSally and others to not consider this as a bailout for cities, or to be suggesting that states declare bankruptcy, but to help us help our constituency. Representative Schweigert called me and asked, we talked about that same thing. And then Senator Sinema has been an advocate for this all along for the leagues and for GPEC's positions. She mentioned the next bill might be under cities over 50,000, so that we still would be not in that. So we're hoping, and she agrees that she doesn't want to do that, it's still too much, and we would agree with that. And she's been helping several individuals and businesses here in Fountain Hills with direct help. People have been writing me back and saying, you know, I got the help, I got the information. So it's really appreciating this continued communication that we're getting from them and from the county. So we can't talk about those things, but I think when we have our legislative item, we'll be able to.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
say we can't talk about those things?
Not right now. I think when Jack is going to give us a report, and then I think we can bring
He's
up.
not going to give us a report on COVID, though.
I'm sorry?
He's not going to give us a report on COVID-19.
Well, he can say something, right? He can ask something now, and we'll see. As long as we don't have some big discussion.
Well, it's just a follow-up to what, a couple of things you raised. I've noticed around town that a lot of people are not paying any attention to not congregating close together. And we don't know who's asymptomatic and who isn't. And all it takes is a couple of people in crowds like that to start a brush fire. And so I will be asking Captain Kreitzer, and I'll just in advance ask him what, if anything, we're doing about that when we see those kinds of situations. The other is just a question to Grady. If, as I suspect, the Congress does make an appropriation to the states, is there any way to know whether or not any of that will really filter down to the jurisdictions?
That's a good question. A lot of times these are formula-type grants and aid, so they would be based on population. And what they've done in the past, even FEMA, is either it's based on actual expenditures or they just kind of do a per capita redistribution. But what they tend to do is it tends to be grants and aid to 50,000 or more, because those are direct recipients of community development block grants. And so what will typically happen is the counties or the state will be the receiver and then the redistributor of those fundings. And you've heard that the $3 trillion bill that was passed, and I think Mr. Lunford will probably get into a little bit of this with his presentation. That's kind of hung up right now in the House, and I believe the Senate's saying it's a no-go. But I think they're going to be able to renegotiate the terms on that. But yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Thank you very much. And again, we can.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
if we're going to, I think you've opened up Pandora's box in regards to this discussion, and now with Councilman Magazine making the comments that he just made, I'd like to make a comment in regards to this COVID-19 issue.
Okay.
My comment is this: if Councilman Magazine wants to discuss with the captain in regards to enforcement of social distancing, this is a policy matter that I think this entire council should be discussing. And I think it should be an agenda item. And if it's something that is that important, then you call a special meeting to discuss it. But no one council member should be, in my opinion, taking it upon themselves and creating policy with the captain in regards to social distancing and enforcement nature matters that he's suggesting. I think that's inappropriate, and I think it's going to cause a lot of controversy in this town.
Mayor,
Thank you. You know what we'll do is when we have the
all I want to do is ask him a question.
Okay, I say when the captain comes up, why don't we have, we can talk about it. Look at him smiling back there, but when you come up, we'll have this conversation. Is that okay? Let's move on to the proclamation for the Day of Prayer. Now, that was another event that was a kind of a victim of the COVID virus. So I'm going to ask Councilman Brown to please present that to Dr. Brewer, if that's okay.
Thank you, Mayor. And Dr. Brewer, I'd like to read it from up here and present it down below, please. whereas the town of Fountain Hills joins together with the entire country on May 7th, 2020 to celebrate the 69th anniversary of the National Day of Prayer, and whereas Congress, by Public Law 100-307, has called on our citizens to reaffirm the role of prayer in our society and to honor the religious diversity that our freedom permits by recognizing a National Day of Prayer, and whereas we are mindful of the heroic men and women of our armed forces, especially those serving abroad in harm's way, and whereas we pray for God's blessing for our governments at town, state, and national levels to shower us with strength and wisdom in order to meet the challenges before us and to work together to bring hope for our community and to enhance the well-being of all the citizens and families of Fountain Hills. And whereas we pray for strength and divine direction in our educational systems, community businesses, media, and our place of worship, and whereas uniting in prayer gives all people faith, regardless of their denomination or religion, an opportunity to join fellow citizens in celebrating the power and the love of God and our perpetual responsibility to Him and to others. Now, therefore, on behalf of Jenny Dickey, Mayor of the town of Fountain Hills, Arizona, I do hereby proclaim May 7th, 2020 as the National Day of Prayer.
Thank you. I don't see Bob here, so I think we're just, yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you, Councilman. Appreciate it. Our next item is similar. It's recognition of outgoing Community Services Advisory Commissioner, Youth Commissioner Hayden Arnold. I'm going to wear this to come down, and then I'll take it off because I think maybe his mom might want. Is she here? Yes. We might want to take a picture, right? Look, I'll even spray my stuff.
Oh, good.
Yep, I'm good. Red came when I was there.
Okay. Off to college. Hayden Arnold began serving on the Community Services Advisory Commission as a Youth Commissioner on January 2018, where he served 3 terms. During Hayden's time on the commission, he participated regularly by providing important input and valuable discussions during meetings. As a local high school student, Hayden developed a unique perspective on many issues. During his time on the commission, Hayden also served as a member of the Mayor's Youth Council and has volunteered for many local events, including the Community Center Takeover and the Dark Sky Festival. Hayden's a senior at Desert Mountain High School and is enrolled in the academically challenging International Baccalaureate program. In a few weeks, he will graduate with an IB diploma, which he already did, in addition to his regular high school diploma. Hayden is focusing and planning on attending the University of Arizona Honors College in fall in computer science and or political science. And we thank you, Hayden, so much for your service to your community. We'll make this picture a little bit better. Well, maybe not. Congratulations. Thank you. We miss our students of the month, don't we? Next, I'm going to ask, I don't know if is Jack on the phone, do we know? You don't know? Jack, are you on the phone? Jack Lunsford? Maybe we can call him. Okay, so we'll move on then, but at some point when he gets here, maybe we'll go ahead and do the legislative report at that time. So now we'll do our report and presentation by Captain Kratzer. Come on up. Thank you. I gave his number to you. Yeah. Hi there.
Hi, how are you?
Good to see you. Good.
Good to see you guys. Thank you. It's good to be back in somewhat of a little bit abnormal
Semi-normal.
circumstance, but at least people are here and we're open back up for business. I wanted to start off by first thanking Councilmember Spellich for bringing up National Police Week, and I just want to echo his comments on that and and also thank the men and women of law enforcement who sacrificed their life. And, our prayers and our thoughts are with those family members who, are left to bear that burden. So thank you for bringing that up and recognizing those men and women. And I know it was last week, but we didn't have the opportunity to do it. So moving forward, I just wanted to, first I want to address some of the kind acts that MCSO has seen over the last couple of months with local businesses here in town. And not only businesses, residents as well. So several restaurants have taken the time to contact me at the district, and they've had the desire to feed the deputies who are working on patrol. And that was a very generous offer. I know they took a large hit through these times, and one restaurant in particular hadn't even opened their doors up until a couple of weeks ago. And prior to opening their doors, the owner contacted me and wanted to find a date that she could feed the deputies. So that was very generous of all those businesses. It was discussed at one of the last council meetings. One restaurant in particular, going back to Easter, fed deputies on Easter night, fed our night deputies, and they remained open a little bit later in the evening than they were planning on being open to make sure that they were able to feed the night deputies. So that was just very generous and kind motion on their part. So I wanted to thank, we had residents who had pizza delivered for deputies. We had residents who dropped off treats and snacks, and the mayor took the opportunity to come and drop off a large container of treats and snacks for the deputies, and that was very much appreciated. So thank you to all the businesses and all the residents and everybody who showed support and, just took that opportunity when they didn't need to. And, we know they're going through hard times, but they still thought that it would be a nice gesture, and it was a very nice gesture, very appreciated. I'll kind of make this presentation a little quick because I know there's some conversation we're wanting to have on another matter. But over the last 2 months, I've seen an uptick, not a large uptick, but a slight uptick in fraud cases, fraud or con game cases. And so it's unfortunate. I've talked about it before, but we know that the demographics of the town makes some of these residents ripe for being taken advantage of. A lot of times, the elderly population is more trusting and more easily convinced to do things that maybe they wouldn't have prior in their life. But we've seen an uptick in those types of scams and scams that target them. And some of those scams that we've seen, unfortunately, we've seen recently a 94-year-old resident scammed out of $150,000, and then an 80-year-old resident scammed out of $19,000. And these are pretty elaborate scams, and there's not a lot law enforcement can do for the investigative side to solve the case or get to the bottom of it with foreign accounts and cell phones that are not traceable or email accounts that aren't traceable. But one of the things that we constantly try to do is educate the public and remind them. And, a lot of these folks that live here that are elderly have maybe children that still live relatively close or out of state that are in constant contact with them. So we try to reach out to not only the residents, but maybe also their children to help keep them aware of some of these scams. And some of the ways we're doing that is just going through local media, the Times reporting, the Fountain Hills Times, letting them know some of the scams we're seeing. One of the things I wanted to highlight is that right now and in the future, as long as things go as planned, the town is looking at conducting a Fountain Hills Cares presentation where residents can come out, and we'll have several sessions that people can learn about different things. And one of those topics is going to surround frauds and con games, so that we can educate residents about what to look out for, how not to be a victim. We also do a lot of community outreach, whether it's at our Coffee with the Cop, excuse me, or just material and print that we have. So I did put some material in the back, and if people are comfortable taking it, I know they're handouts, so people may not want to grab them, and that's fine. We can deliver those online and electronic versions too, but we have some documents back there about 10 things you can do to avoid fraud, and just some other identity theft things. So we're just hoping that people take the time to be aware. And it's unfortunate that you can't be trusting, but some of these scams really hit on trying to obtain the trust of these people to get them to open up bank accounts or provide financial information to those folks. The other thing that we're looking at doing here very soon, things got pushed back with everything going on surrounding COVID-19, but the Nextdoor app that I had talked about several months ago, that's getting close to being pushed out online. We're logging into that now, and that will give us the opportunity to push information out to the community. We can push it out to draw a line around a map, push it out to certain segments that maybe are affected, or the entire community, those folks that are signed up for that. That's an avenue that we can use to try to educate and make people aware of current scams going on. So with that being said, I'll cut that short so that I can then address some of the issues that were brought up. I just wanted to, I heard the tail end of what Councilmember Magazine brought up about social distancing and the enforcement of such, and then I heard Councilmember Tullis's comments about that. The one thing I'd like to add, and then we can have discussion if it's appropriate, is that MCSO and the way it's designed here in town with town manager, I don't know that there's a scenario where one council member directs the enforcement action of the agency. So most of our direction in dealing with this has come from the sheriff himself. And I know this thing is ever evolving, and a lot of these things are new to the agency and all law enforcement. And unfortunately, a lot of the burden was placed on local law enforcement to be that enforcement mechanism. So it was a constant learning situation and a constant evolving situation. So just to state something about social distancing, the approach that we're taking on that is similar to the approach we took on the governor's stay-at-home order or restaurant and on-site dining order. Is, you know, if we get calls for service for those, we are going to respond as required. Sheriff Penzone outlined a program where it's a lighter, softer touch, where our deputy service aide, we have 2 of those that work here in the town. They're civilian employees, but they are driving around in semi-marked vehicles. They're in a modified uniform. They don't look like a deputy sheriff. So when we get calls for any violations, the intent is to send them to see if there is perceived violation, and if so, we can go forward from there with a contact or an educational opportunity with that business. So, for example, if it was a social distancing call that we get, I'm happy to say we haven't had one of those calls yet. I know restaurants just recently opened and gyms and some of those other establishments, but we've not had any calls for that yet. I'm sure we probably have all seen situations where, you know, we think that, well, that doesn't look like people are social distancing. So if someone takes the opportunity to call and report something like that, we will respond and we'll see if there's an issue, and then we'll try to talk to the owner or a manager, or depending on if it's a business or restaurant or residential. But it's an educational approach, and the only way there'd be any sort of enforcement activity if it's an egregious or patterned or you know, clearly egregious, where it's just extreme, where we had to. And one of the approaches Sheriff Penzone outlined when the governor modified the restaurants he extended the stay-at-home order, and some restaurants, there was rumor that they were going to remain open and defy the order. The sheriff took the approach that there would be no physical arrest, there would be no even issuance of citations at that point. It would be a long-form citation to the county attorney, where the county attorney would make that ultimate charging decision. So, you know, I know there's plenty of opinions on the matter, whether that's right, wrong, or whatever the case, but that's the approach that MCSO is taking. And, you know, my point to that is, you know, if there was a council member who specifically desired a more hands-on approach, I mean, that, I'm not arguing the point that that could be a conversation we could have, but, you know, obviously in the end, it would be something that the sheriff's office would refer to my chain of command, the sheriff, to see if that's the enforcement action we want to take or proceed with. So I'm sure there might be some discussions or question on any part of this, and I'm happy to take any of those questions.
Councilman?
Thank you, Captain. Apparently, Councilman Tullis thought he could muzzle me. The only 2 people I know who can muzzle me are the mayor and my wife. And I certainly wasn't suggesting that I wanted to establish policy. I simply wanted to ask some questions, because this virus is spread very easily. A lot of people can be asymptomatic, and it's one thing to spread it among their small group if they're together. It's another to give it to me and my wife and everybody else. And so you have you've addressed what I wanted to hear, so I very much appreciate it.
You're welcome, sir.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And by no means am I interested in muzzling Councilman Magazine. I think you always have a lot of valid issues to address with the council, and I'm not trying to muzzle you. What I am trying to address is the misunderstanding, and I want clarification that one council member should not be addressing the captain, and your statement previously was very much you were suggesting that there isn't enough being done to enforce locally. And that conversation, I think, needs to be something that the entire council would have, and with the town manager for that matter, because I think that would probably be more of a executive session discussion. But help me understand, Captain, and I appreciate all you do, and you have a very difficult job, especially while the executive order was in effect. But my understanding is that the executive order has been rescinded, or it expired essentially as of May 15th at 11:59 p.m. And the help me understand if there's some additional laws, Arizona statutes, that you are now having to potentially enforce in regards to the social distancing, or is this something that we are suggested to do as a society?
Councilmember Tolis, I'll respond on that. And if there is if Aaron at all, the town attorney, wanted to chime in at any point, I'd be happy for him to chime in or speak. But so it's the executive stay-at-home order expired on the 15th. There still are provisions that do require certain aspects of the order in terms of social distancing. And I know there's been conversation. I've seen what's gone on in Tempe with some of the bars there that opened, and some of the lack of social distancing, and the conversation that occurred with the Tempe Police Department and the governor there, or the mayor there. So it is still our direction that we would go out and make contact with those businesses, and ultimately have that conversation with the business or the persons involved and educate them on the social distancing. The enforcement aspect, I think that's why the sheriff has taken the stance that it would be a long form submittal, that the county attorney can make a decision on that, just to make sure nobody's rights are being violated, and that if the county attorney felt it appropriate for enforcement in that area, they would ultimately make that charging decision. Aaron, did you have anything to add on that? Okay.
I just want to clarify too. Basically, the sheriff deputies only respond on a complaint basis, so it would be a call that is received from the dispatch to the sheriff deputies. They're not actually going out seeking violations. It's only on a complaint basis that they will respond.
Yeah, that's correct. So thank you, town manager. We are. I've sent protocol. I've had discussions with all the patrol sergeants, the lieutenants. That's been passed down to the deputies. It's not a proactive enforcement that we're going around looking for anybody who appears to not be socially distancing. So we're trying to take a very light approach on this. We're trying not to impede anybody's rights to gather or assemble. We're just trying to be responsible with having those conversations that we feel are appropriate if we get a call, and our responsibility requires such.
Thank you. Any other?
Thank you. Yeah, Mayor, I just want to follow up, and Captain, I hate to put you on the spot, but I think it's important for the constituents. I think it's important for this council. I think it's important for everyone to hear. What statutes what statutes or provisions of this executive order that, from my understanding as a citizen, that it has expired as of May 15th and was not extended? What are we basing this discussion on in regards to the complaints that people could make, and how that those complaints would have any justification for law enforcement to actually go out and act upon?
Councilmember Tolis, I wasn't prepared with the actual documents or statutes. I know, the statute that's enforceable per the governor and the Attorney General's office is ARS 317, and that just addresses the enforcement of the powers for the governor to enforce orders in time of an emergency, and the requirement for residents, civilians, whatever you want to say, to follow such orders. So with an order still being in place and, without having all that information at hand, I could follow up on that for you if that's what you're asking, and try to get maybe a written response to you for that. I just don't have all that to quote right now here at the current time.
I appreciate that follow-up because my understanding of the ARS 317 is the executive order itself, which has expired as of May 15th. So any clarification that you can provide that would give some sort of justification for someone having the right to, anyone has the right to call and complain, but if people are calling and complaining about social distancing and people gathering when there is no executive order in place right now, I think there's something to be challenged there.
If I may, Councilmember Tullis, there are still a number of the executive orders that are still in effect right now. The big one, as you referenced, was the stay-at-home order, and that did expire. The governor allowed that to expire on May 15th. The social distancing, all the other ones that did not expire, I mean, we have opened up, the retail, restaurants, gyms, a number of other businesses, retailers, but they're still required to have social distancing in place. And then your point about the gatherings, those are still very much prohibited for the most part, anything in excess of 10 people of any kind of social gathering. So those are still very much in effect. So I just want to make sure that we're clear.
I appreciate, thank you. But I just want to know in writing, because my understanding is all of these provisions were in that executive order that's over as of May 15th. Everything else is suggestive behavior from my perspective. If you have something that indicates otherwise, I think that would be great to know.
Councilman Tullis, this is Aaron Arnson. Jumping in just to make sure that for your purposes, as you mentioned, the public's aware that some of the provisions that were in that stay-at-home order were carried over into the new executive order that was promulgated by the governor's office on May 12th. It's Executive Order 2020-36. And like Captain Kratzer, I'm happy to follow up with additional information to the entire council. But those executive orders and those that are still in effect certainly are all available online as well. I'm happy to provide the link. So like Captain Kratzer, I'm not prepared with the specific provisions of each order, but there is one that incorporates social distancing and related provisions, and that is currently in effect, and it was promulgated, I guess, Tuesday of last week.
Thank you. I want to mention that it's azgovernor.gov. Go to that website. It says news releases. You go to news releases and executive orders. Every one of them is listed there. And sometimes, since they're kind of long, if you read the news release, because it's more like in English, it really helps. The part that is admittedly confusing is that it says, this last one says, when you open, these various businesses, and bars isn't one of them yet. It says that you shall implement these, and then it refers you back to the CDC. So it's not like all easy in one little place, but it says that you shall. So that means then you go back to CDC, which has these nice guidelines on how to do things safely. So the shall part is always the one that's you learn that at the legislature. That usually means that you will, but there is still some flexibility in here. So I wish it was more, one way or the other for the captain's sake and for everybody's sake. But the executive orders that are in place do have specific guidelines with them. And again, if you read the press releases, sometimes that's a little bit easier and more clear to understand. Yes.
I understand, and I understand what you're saying, Mayor, and I think that it's important to just get clarification because there is a Section 6 in that executive order from May 12th that indicates nothing in the order shall prevent a person from engaging in constitutionally protected activities such as free speech and religion or participating in a democratic process. These are that's spelled out right in that executive order. So there's a lot of vagueness to this, and that's why I asked for clarification. So we'll wait for additional clarification. And I don't mean to put anyone on the spot, but I think the constituents of this community, I think we've got a lot of mixed views. By no means am I downplaying the importance of social distancing, and people should be respectful. I think one thing that Councilman Magazine said that everyone should take into consideration is that in the respect of others and respecting others' needs as well, but it works both ways. So Councilman Magazine and others that feel threatened or violated or feel that they are putting themselves at risk, I think it's very important that as we move forward in this new normal, that everyone takes those risks upon themselves, and that's an important point to make. Constitutional rights should not be violated in any way, shape, or form.
I agree, and I think that you know that our court system here agreed that when it came to Governor Ducey's orders, they're certainly constitutional. So I think we'll move on if that's okay.
No, Madam Mayor?
Pardon me?
Mayor, it's Dave.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Everybody take a deep breath. I'm not going to touch this subject with a 10-foot pole. I'm going to give my body a break from 2 weeks of being the town's piñata on social media. So I will talk about a subject that I have knowledge of. And that subject would be, Captain Kratzer, what I would like is if you could ask the detectives that are assigned to Fountain Hills to please take the time to meet with bank managers for the banks within Fountain Hills and inform them of the scams that are going on in town, so that when customers are coming to the bank withdrawing large amounts of money, the tellers can ask questions of them, which could possibly deter this. I'm sure no one put $150,000 on their credit card. I would be surprised if the person that lost the $15,000 put that on their credit card. So I know in Chicago when we had scams like that, we made it a point to have the financial crimes detectives visit each bank in the area, meet with the bank managers so that they could then disseminate the information to the tellers, and quite possibly they could maybe stop someone who might be confused or whatever making a large withdrawal and stop the crime.
Thank you, Councilmember Spellich. I hear your request there, and I think there's some value in that, and I'll look into what we can do in that area.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
Mayor and Council, Jack Lunsford, the town's lobbyist and intergovernmental affairs expert representing the town, is actually on the line right now. And we were going to bring the legislative agenda item up to this topic right now.
Thank you. Yeah, so we'll move thank you, Captain. We'll move item 8G to hear a brief report from our consultant, and he'll be reporting on state and federal legislative issues. Jack, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Hope everyone can hear me clearly, and members of the council, town manager, Miller, I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you today. As you have all discussed already, and I've been online, there's a lot happening. And if I may, I'd like to start with the status of the legislature, because a couple of things are coming forward in particular that might either address the previous conversation or confuse it. I'm not sure which, and I'll try not to confuse. So the Senate met last Thursday and sent a message to the House that they were ready to adjourn. So there was reports that they had already adjourned. That was not the case. And so they just told the House they're ready to adjourn. The House, in turn, actually met today, and there were committee meetings and so on, and there are more scheduled this week. In particular, the notion was that legislative bills would either be COVID-related directly or indirectly, and probably approximately 60 of those, most of which were already through the process in the Senate and coming over to the House. They would not be amended so that they could go to the governor. I'm going to give you a caveat to that in just a minute. As the House finished voting on bills, they introduced 300 plus bills today. The reading is so fast. I assume that they're all Senate bills, but I'm not sure until we see a list. And so we don't know. For example, we were tracking the short-term rental bill at Mr. Miller's request. That has essentially died as far as we know. As the mayor knows, nothing is dead until they adjourn, and so we'll continue watching. The one of most significance that I think I can draw your attention to relates to the conversation that just occurred. Representative Kavanaugh, along with Senator Farnsworth, are introducing legislation regarding civil liability for people who have violated the executive orders or who may violate them. And I'm going to summarize very, very quickly what it speaks to. There are prohibitions from a person from being charged with or convicted of an act that's required by an executive order that's issued during an emergency declaration, and a person who knowingly fails or refuses to obey any law or order is required to pay a fine, civil penalty no more than $100. Mayor alluded to the governor's order in existence, which that fee is much higher than that, and there's an attempt to draw it down to $100. There's a prohibition on cities and towns in particular where license or permits to conduct business are issued. The prohibition is from suspending or revoking those permits based on an act that may be committed directly, that's prohibited from the executive order. So a town couldn't go forward if restaurant A or business B was in violation of the executive order or alleged to be in violation. The town could not revoke their permit or license under this proposed legislation. There's the liability immunity applies civilly if a person contracts COVID during the state of emergency. They will not be able to take an action against schools, individual businesses, corporations, churches, or religious institutions or nonprofits. There is a version from Senator Leach that would expand that civil immunity to governmental agencies and healthcare providers. That is one that the League of Cities and Towns is in support of. I've got another client that's a municipality that's in support of it as well. This legislation would contain an emergency clause, which would be means it's effective immediately upon passage, but it requires a 2/3 vote from each chamber in order to be effective immediately. Otherwise, if it passes without the 2/3 majority, then it becomes effective but not until 90 days after the legislature adjourns. And that assumes the governor signs it. Mayor, if you'd like, I could stand for any questions here before I go into the one that I have shared with the issue that I've shared with you and with Manager Miller about the federal stimulus package.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Lunsford? Anybody on the phone? I have a question about the first bill you talked about, the one where the executive orders would just be civil penalties for $100. Would that go in the future too for any executive order that any governor would proclaim?
As I read, Mayor and members of the council, as I read this, I think they're going to restrict it into session law, which would mean that it would only be in this particular time. But again, nobody outside the legislature, and maybe a few select individuals, not including me, has seen the exact language. So I wouldn't want to opine absolutely one way or another on that because we haven't seen the language.
Okay, thank you. That would go to what Art was talking about a little bit, like what is the law? You know, what is violating right now an executive order is the law. So the other ramification of that would be obviously some other situation where we maybe needed an executive order on that. Well, we'll look forward to hearing more about that, where that one goes. And then, yes, you were going to talk about some infrastructure, transportation stuff?
So on the, thank you, Mayor. In particular on the federal level, there, as most of you know, are efforts for the next round of federal stimulus relief. And indeed, I'm sure you know, the U.S. House passed a $3 trillion bill last Friday. The ball obviously is in the Senate's court now, and I did see some publication earlier that there are conversations on a bipartisan basis to move forward. The issue that's important to all of us in Arizona is transportation. I am a member of Transportation Business Partners, which is a group of advocates for transportation, both roads, highways, and transit for the state of Arizona. It's because I've been involved in transportation since the mid-'80s. But that group has evolved into one called the Arizona Coalition for Transportation Infrastructure. There are 41 plus organizations in that group, a lot of chambers, a lot of business organizations, East Valley Partnership, but also corporations like Salt River Project, Southwest Gas, my own business, Tucson Electric Power, and Valley Partnership. We have come forward with a one-page document and letter that would we're asking as many organizations as possible to communicate with our congressional delegation, in particular the Senate, but the entire delegation, and it's got two components. One is COVID economic stimulus infrastructure investment, and the second one is fast track the transportation reauthorization at the federal level, because we have to reauthorize that. It's the Highway Act for most folks. A couple of quick facts on the transportation infrastructure. The Highway User Revenue Fund, which obviously fuels our roads and so on in Arizona, the estimate recently was that it may have a shortfall of $500 million. As of last Friday, when the State Transportation Board met, the estimate was increased to a shortfall of $711 million for the state of Arizona. That doesn't include the $175 million in bonds that we were prepared to issue, that the market's probably not very good right now for additional transportation in the state of Arizona. Many of the agencies who manage transportation funds are reducing their projections and their budgets by up to 15% in FY21. Today, I was on a Zoom meeting with Senator McSally and our group. Approximately 50 people were on it, and the information I shared with you, it was front and center, but also asking where grants are involved to local governments. So MAG has grants, ADOT has grants, that greater flexibility and even waivers for the matching requirements be extended. There was a question of whether that requires congressional action or it can be done by agency action, and it's a combination of both. So, Mayor and Council, in summary, I would ask that you consider the supporting communication to the Arizona delegation in support of additional transportation infrastructure for not only Arizona, but just like we have in the other CARES Act, where the funds would trickle down to the town of Fountain Hills. And again, Mayor, I would stand for questions.
Thank you very much, Jack. Any questions from anybody? Councilman?
Not on that issue, but going back to the federal, you mentioned the $3 million relief bill passed by the House. The majority leader has said an absolute no on the issue of liability, and you said there are folks discussing this. I saw something in the paper, I don't know what it said, but have you heard or seen anything that indicates there could be a compromise on that issue?
Mayor and Councilman Magazine, I think where I was talking about that was at the local level with regard to liability. I wasn't speaking to it at the federal level, but I do understand that would be part of the conversation at the federal level. According to Senator McSally today, those negotiations continue on the Senate side, and I think what I've been experiencing is sometimes if one chamber doesn't act, the other one does. So the House, basically the federal House, U.S. House, passed the $3 trillion stimulus bill, essentially to try to set the terms of debate. So it will be some form and shape of that, and I would venture and guess that it would address the civil liability issue. But circling back to the initial part of your question, what we were talking about earlier has to do with state liability in violation of the order. And I hope I answered.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
Okay.
Thank you. Any questions from anybody on the phone? Thank you, Jack. We're gonna, I think I might have sent a copy of this letter to everybody, I'm not sure, but we'll definitely take a look at that, and because we would, of course, support that. We rely a lot on HERF funds, of course, and Mike knows all about that. So we'll definitely take a look at that. And you just keep us posted on everything, because it's changing every day on what's going on down actually in Arizona at the Capitol. If you have anything else, Jack?
No, Mayor, thank you for the privilege to visit with you all today. And to your point, yeah, I think I sent 3 updates or 4 updates last week to Manager Miller on this. And you're right, it will change again maybe tomorrow. So I'll stay on top of it. I'll communicate as best I can, and I look forward to any action that council may take with regard to support of the infrastructure at the federal level.
Thanks a lot, Jack. Appreciate it. Thanks for calling in. And
Thank you all. Have a good evening.
You too. Next is our call to the public, which we haven't had for a while. Do we have any cards? No? Oh. All right. We'll go to the consent agenda then. Did everybody get a chance to take a look? And if you don't want to take anything off, can I have a motion?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any against? No. Thanks very much. So now we'll go to our regular agenda, which is a public hearing for adoption of our general plan, which we've been working on for a long time, John. And so do I open the hearing, right? I always forget. Opening a public hearing, which will be where we can hear from the public and we can discuss, and then we'll close the hearing and discuss further if we like and take a vote. So, Grady?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, this item already was previously approved at a Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. We have Development Services Director John Wesley, who will be coming up and giving a report presentation on this. This started over a year ago. A lot of hard work and effort has gone into this process. Very fortunate to have Maria Mask of the Planning Center. She's been the project manager. She's actually on the phone as well, so if you have any questions or technical questions that John can't answer tonight, she is available on the phone and will be able to answer questions. With that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Wesley, who will then give a presentation.
Thank you.
Mayor and Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening. Grateful to have been able to be part of this process over the last year as we've worked on developing this plan and working with Maria and the folks at the Planning Center to develop this plan for the next 10 years for the growth and development of Fountain Hills. So just to start off, I thought it would be fun to look back and see over the last year and a half. You can see where we started with public input. We're down to the next to last step here this evening with council review and hopefully approval of the plan and the resolution to set the public vote for the very last step, which would be the public vote in November of this year. Before getting into the discussion of the plan itself, I wanted to start with this piece that's in the plan in terms of this guiding principle. As the consultant listened to the input from the citizens, and we discussed it, and the role of a plan in helping guide and direct the future growth and development of a community, we felt it was important that we don't just lock into the individual elements that are required and usually contained in a plan, but look at how they really can work together and holistically to help develop and continue to make Fountain Hills a thriving community. And so we created this overarching principle, which is contained in the plan, with these 3 primary elements of a community: the neighborhoods, the places where people live; the economy, where people work and where people shop; and that environment that we all live and operate in, and how that creates that social network that we all rely upon to, again, bring us together as a community. So that then formed the organization and a lot of discussion in the plan. So we look at the plan document itself. You see the 5 sections. There's a section devoted towards neighborhoods, one devoted towards the environment, and one devoted towards the economy as those principal elements. Then all the other requirements that go into a plan are woven into those. You'll see some topics that are maybe repeated a little bit because they overlap. in different parts of the community and how they're related, and we'll see a little bit of that as we go through this evening. So I'm just going to quickly go through the elements of the plan and present you some of the high points that we have there, and then see what questions you have. So again, one of the first places we started based on the input from the community was a vision. This vision statement is meant to capture both the important elements that we have in town that make us a special place that we want to make sure we focus on and carry on in the future, things such as the first point on the native desert and vegetation, the topography, and other statements about the dark skies and so forth. Those are things that we have today that people find important and we want to preserve. There are other things in this vision statement that are a little bit more aspirational for where we want to go in the future. And the shopping options that abound, the economy statements that are in there. We have some of that, but we certainly have a lot of room to grow as we work on providing that complete and holistic community and provide for the finances of the town and so forth. So again, this is a combination of both those items, things we have and things we want to have as we continue to grow and make Fountain Hills a thriving community. Then looking at the first, really the second section of the plan, but the first of the three overarching principles that with regard to neighborhoods. We looked at three main elements within that area. Housing, certainly the main part of a neighborhood are the houses that are there, the places people live. And so there's discussion and policies and so forth that deal with the housing stock and the type of housing stock we want to see, and diversifying it to address the needs of families and professionals, things that can promote quality neighborhood development, and how we can go about maintaining the existing character of the neighborhoods that we have. Amenities are also an important part of neighborhoods, and so we discussed that, the parks and schools and other amenities that make neighborhoods good places to live, and how we then connect people to those neighborhoods. And then finally, neighborhood safety is discussed. A neighborhood's no good if you don't feel safe living in your neighborhood, if you don't feel like you can go out and enjoy the amenities and so forth. So that's an important part of that particular section. Move into the thriving environment piece next, with the built environment being the first part of that. We're talking about the places. Here we review some of the background in terms of zoning and land use currently in the town. The major piece of this section is the community areas and the community area map. You're used to general plans. If you looked at them all, they have land use plans. And those land use plans focus very narrowly on this is very low density residential, this is a medium density residential, this is an office area, this is a commercial area, industrial area. Sort of divides the town up or city up in regard to those basic land uses without a lot of consideration for really the type of environment that you want to create within those areas. This plan takes a little bit different approach by talking about the character. So it takes that land use concept, but combines it with other thoughts, such as, is it an urban or suburban place? Is it a high density, low density? Is it mixed use, single use? So because Fountain Hills is largely developed and the character is largely established through the town, we took that as the base and could look at each of those character areas and say what's good there that we want to maintain, and what are maybe some of the adjustments that could be made in the future as it continues to grow or evolve. And then it allows us more flexibility in terms of implementing the plan within those parameters. So if today you'd have a general plan change for very small items, very slight changes, but this will allow, again, more flexibility in that in the future. So as you look at the character area map, this is on, it's not on, now it's on. I probably just changed it. There we go. And so you can see most of the town in this yellow color, neighborhoods. That's mostly what Fountain Hills is. It covers most of the community. There's an area in here, kind of an orange color. It's a commerce area. It's an area just kind of west of the downtown. It's got the Bashes and the Safeway in it. It's a commercial area. And it's got a character that's distinct from the town center area that's in blue. Town center area is more urban. The other is a little bit more suburban, more auto-oriented. So it allows us to look at those changes while still talking about the needs of those different communities. And then going down along Saguaro, you got an area that's in kind of a lavender color. That's that commercial area. That's a C3 zone. It's almost a semi-industrial type area the way it's developed. And so it treats it a little bit differently and looks at how that can evolve over time differently than the others. And then finally down here at Shea and Saguaro in that commercial area. Again, it's different and distinct from the others. So as we go then to the next couple of pages with the table that goes with the map, it defines a little bit more about each of the areas. what we're looking for in the focus, maintenance, infill, redevelopment that might happen in those areas. And then some general plan ideas about what's important that we want to maintain in those areas and what some of those modifications might be in the future that we might work on as a town in implementing some of the plan, or if development comes to us, what are those key features we're looking for within those areas. So this is kind of the main thing staff would use as rezoning or site plans come in the future. How are we doing in implementing this and further enhancing the character of these different areas. From there, in terms of the built environment, we move on to a section about the social environment. Again, an important part of the community is how we interact and engage each other. Remember, we started writing this before the coronavirus, so we might have to kind of adjust some of these things as we go forward and how we go about doing our social environments. But it talks about the parks and the plazas, the streets and the sidewalks. Now those are things that connect people and bring us together and provide that opportunity for the social interaction. Built environment then moves on to connectivity. So this is an example where, again, we're talking about streets. Before we're talking about streets as social connectors, here we're talking about the more physical street network, the hierarchy of streets and sidewalks and those types of things, how we connect to the larger region and safety issues that go with having that system. Finally, on the built environment, part of that is all the infrastructure things that go into the town, the water, the sewer, issues, law enforcement, fire protection. This will come up again here at the end, but one of the comments we received along the way was with regard to environmental issues in brownfields and how we address those. And we look back and we hadn't really covered that very well in the plan. So that was one of the late additions, was adding that to this section of the plan. It's part of the proposal really for this evening for your consideration. Then the other part of the environment is the natural environment, in addition to the built environment, so the natural environment. So here's where we're talking about our environmental stewardship, the topography and hydrology and clean air, clean water, dark skies. Those issues are all addressed in this particular section of the plan with the goals and policies that go with that. And then section 4 of the plan deals with the economy, broken into two parts. One is actually economic development area, and what we can do to help encourage continued development in the town. This is coordinated very closely with the town strategic plan and the update to that plan that will be happening over the next year. And so there are a lot of references there and trying to move forward with economic development activities. It also covers the cost of development. This is largely about how the town funds its activities and programs and funds development and works with development activities. The last section of the plan is with regard to the administration implementation of the plan. So here's where we talk about and define major and minor amendments under this plan. And again, it's one of the things we got comments on. We had initially proposed some ideas and got some feedback and made some adjustments that are part of the amendments that we'll cover in a minute. But because we're taking a little bit different approach to the land use plan in terms of the character area, we had to take a little bit different approach here to how we would categorize and consider what's a major and a minor amendment. So in here we talk a little bit about changes to the text of the plan. And if you are basically just adjusting some things really within the intent and goal of what's there, that would be a minor amendment. But if somebody comes up with an idea and we want to create a whole new character area to add to the map, well, that would be a major amendment. Or somehow really fundamentally change one of the character types, that would be a major amendment. In terms of changing the map itself, if you want to change, the neighborhood area, if you remember, that's most of the town. That's a lot of acres. I don't remember the number now, it's not in front of me. So if you want to change 1% of that size, then that would become a major plan amendment. Within the smaller character areas, again, those are much smaller, so if you want to change about 20% of those is what we've set in turn one from, say, here at the boundary between the town center and the commerce area of the west, if somehow we wanted to move that line one way or the other to make one 20% larger, that'd be a major amendment to do that kind of thing. That's what that's talking about there. Anything less than those would be considered a minor amendment to the plan. But we also put in here that if you get down all the way, though, to something that's 5 acres or smaller, that is so small in terms of the scale of that map, you're not really going to see it. It's not really going to affect the overall character of those areas to change something that small. So we don't even need to do a plan amendment for something that small. Just consider the site plan, consider the rezoning. If it gets approved, it gets approved. If not, just take it on its own basis in terms of context of the plan, but not have to change the plan to approve those things. Again, trying to provide a little bit more flexibility in how we move forward and allow creativity in the market as things are needed. So then the last section of the administration piece, implementation. And there are, I can go back and count them again, 15 to 20 pages of implementation strategies. We spent a lot of time going back and looking at each of the goals and policies that are contained in the rest of the plan, and then putting together some strategies that could be used to help move forward on implementing those particular policies and those goals. And with this, we have identified who lead agencies might be with those, the time frame. A lot of them are kind of ongoing things that we're doing on a regular basis anyway, but otherwise, if they should be things we'd work on immediately or have a little bit longer time frame, some ideas of how things could be funded if funding is necessary, and then the related partners that could work together. So again, this was developed over the last few months based on what we knew at that time. As we go forward and implement this plan over the months and years to come, certainly these priorities are going to change. Certainly we're going to come up with new strategies that we didn't think of when we wrote this one, but this gives us a good idea of a good place to start, and that's what staff will be using when this is approved as a place we start and look at things we can do to implement this plan. Certainly be something we'll focus on as get another one of the implementation criteria as we come back on an annual basis, give council an update on plan implementation. And we'd be coming back to this on that annual basis and saying, here's what we've done, here's changes we think we need to make, or we're not decided not to do this, we're going to do these instead. That type of thing would be reviewed with council on an annual basis. So again, that's a quick overview of a 150-page document. Mayor, I don't know if you'd want to see if there are any questions now, or I can finish my presentation before we go on to any questions about the kind of the process and the final amendments.
Thank you, John, so much. Boy, it's been a lot of months and a lot of work, and really appreciate it. And our consultant on the phone also really a nice, beautiful overview. And I'd like to ask council if they'd like to ask some questions. Alan?
You know me. Congratulations, John. Excellent job.
Thank you.
I didn't make any secret of it a year and a half ago that I wasn't happy that we had to spend over $100,000 to do this. I think it's very important that we tell the citizens that this was mandated by the state and that we do this every 10 years. I'm sure we'll get some emails and calls about why did you spend that money on this. Did SPAC members have any particular questions or comments, or did the citizens, anything that was an issue?
Mayor, council member, maybe I'll go ahead and cover the slide that's in front of me because it gets to that specific question. So back in November of last year, we got the first rough draft of the plan document. We did go out to both the policy, the general public, and to our stakeholder advisory group, and went to the SPAC meeting to see if they had any input, comments on the plan, as well as just having things open and available for people to provide comment. From those comments and staff input, then on that first draft, it was refined. In January, basically the final draft was put out to the public, and that's the plan that we've been reviewing since then and receiving comments on, but has not been officially changed. That is the version. But we've gone to council, we've gone to the P&Z Commission, we've had those stakeholder meetings, online reviews. We're required by state statute to send out that final plan to a number of county and state and agencies, adjacent jurisdictions, so forth, give them the opportunity to provide feedback. And so we've done all that. And from that, we've compiled a list that was attached here in a matrix of 23 comments we did receive. Again, the SPAC was part of that process to get those comments, and then staff has responded, and the consultant to each one of those comments, some of which were pretty minor typo type things that we have just fixed in the plan, some a little bit more substantive, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But yes, we have received comments. We have proposed modifications to the plan based on the comments we've received, even some that we've received today, well, I'll talk about here in just a minute, that are some final modifications we'll want to make as part of the final approval.
Thank you. We're going to be sending out the final plan, or we're going to be asking the voters to vote on the final plan. And you may be addressing this as well. Is there any plan to do a Cliff Notes version? Something, fairly simple, not 150 pages, that people can digest and start to and get a feel for what this is all about. And then, sort of related to that, how do we get the word out?
Okay, Mayor, Councilmember Magazine, those are excellent questions because it is always a bit of a challenge council's going to take action on this, hopefully tonight, if not at your next meeting. Then it's all the way to November before the election. How do we keep that fresh? How do we keep people ready to vote at that time? And because it's the town's item, we're in a little bit, we can educate, but we can't advocate, so walking that line. And Maria, I'll give you a heads up. I'm going to turn this over to you in just a second. But certainly one of the requirements of the contract with the consultant is putting together an executive summary. And Maria's been working on that, but she has to have a final document before she can finish it. So she's not going to finish that until after the vote tonight. So Maria, could you give us an update on where you are on that executive summary?
Yes, can you hear me, everybody?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, thank you, welcome.
Can you hear me, Mayor?
I can, welcome to our meeting.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and council members. Yes, it has been a very long process, and one of the most important items that we're in the process of completing is the executive summary, and that is going to be what Councilmember Magazine is exactly referring to, something that summarizes everything in a manner that it can be used as a marketing tool, as an education tool, and it will summarize everything that for people that don't want to go and read the entire document, and let them know what the key specific items or issues covered in the plan are. And it's also going to have a little section, which is also in the plan, that talks about the statutory requirements and the legislative requirements and all of that summarized, so that people understand that this is something that the town is mandated to do, and it's not something that is happening for the grace of it, if you may say. So I don't know if that answers your question regarding that. And actually, I talked to John earlier today, and I am ready to have that executive summary once the council, if it is adopted, with whatever changes it is adopted. I'm almost have that executive summary completed, so it will be a matter of revising it with any changes that might impact that document. So we'll be ready this week. So when you start going out in the public to kind of do the advertising plus the PowerPoints and those kinds of things, you can have those available on the website, and Mr. Wesley can use that tool, and also the city manager or council members, the mayor, whomever wants to use the tool can be used for that.
Thank you very much. I'd like to request that the council get to review the executive summary before it goes out. I've learned the hard way that a consultant's executive summary can be entirely different from other people's executive summaries. And so I would like to have an opportunity to at least review it. If it's too turgid and too hard to follow and fine print, people just throw it in the trash. And I know the consultants have had a lot of experience at this, so I trust that what they'll come forward with will meet our expectations.
Mayor, council member, I think that's a very good point. As professionals working in the field every day, it's very clear to us, but we do need to make sure it's clear to average citizens what it says. So I think that'd be a very good idea to get some feedback on it before it's finalized.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Any other questions?
If I may, that is the process. Yeah.
Any other council questions?
Last thing, if I may, I just want to thank the staff, the stakeholders, and the consultants for doing an excellent job. This is not easy, and so I really appreciate all the hard work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Mike?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So, John, the character areas that you developed, I mean, would you say those are more or less, a subject of what's existing out there as far in terms of existing buildings and or zoning?
Yes, Mayor, Councilmember Child, that's very true. Since most of the town is built, there's very little vacant land. It was very easy then to look at, and maybe I can get back to that very quickly, I hope. Look at the existing development and the kind of the types of development, particularly with the neighborhoods. It's so large and covers so many things. So you'll see on this particular page, and I know you can't read the details from there, but within that large neighborhood area, we've identified kind of 3 subtypes of neighborhoods that are out there. And so we can pretty easily identify those on the ground. So as development occurs, and we can look at, okay, what's the established character in this neighborhood, and so which one of these is it, and so what types of development is most appropriate, is what's being proposed consistent with that or divergent from that character to help us, again, evaluate what can work in a given area.
But yet you would say that this plan allows for changes. Obviously, it does allow for changes. I mean, by law, we have to include provisions to allow amendments, correct?
Correct.
So within each character area, there can be changes made to the general plan.
Absolutely.
I just feel that, in light of the whole daybreak issue the last few months, we've, been taken to task for amending the general plan. And if you could further explain a little bit how that works in terms of, the general plan is general and it allows for issues to come forward and to be considered and possibly make changes. So just want you to address that a little bit.
Yeah, again, Mayor, Councilman Chanel, certainly a plan is a policy document. It's not an ordinance. It is guidance that's adopted at a specific time with the understanding that it needs to be and will be amended, certainly at least every 10 years, but the mechanisms are set up and established specifically in the plan. State statute says that each town, city is to define what is a major versus a minor amendment, and the process is then within some basic requirements of the statute, how those minor and major amendments will be handled. And so we've done that in this plan with a full expectation that while Maria is a very good seasoned planner, we don't always get everything exactly right, and things do change. And so we have to be able to respond to those over a 10-year period.
And I thought it was interesting, too, the area right at Palisades and Shea. I mean, it's basically circled as a secondary gateway, not a primary. I mean, there's only 2 primary gateways in the town, or 3, I guess, if you count to the north. But I just thought that was interesting in terms of how planners look at different entrances and the emphasis put on them in terms of the character and what they like to see and that kind of thing. So I just thought that was interesting. Mm-hmm. And because the other thing I noted too, I mean, there was one section in the neighborhood's character, it talked about directing higher density residential and mixed use development to the town center and to the Shea corridor. So I agree with that. That's what I think we should be doing, and I think that's kind of what we did, and I know some would argue with that, but I just want to point out there is some flexibility in this 150-page document, and there is some reasoning to be had for looking at projects as they come in and saying yay or nay. I mean, I just don't think we should be, pilloried for doing what the general plan is set up to do. But
absolutely.
It's just my opinion.
5 minutes and the polls close, so. Alan?
Yeah, I think Councilman Charno raises an excellent point. And I wonder, this is not gospel, and I wonder if there's a way to have some language at the very front of this that basically articulates what he's raising. This is a general plan. Circumstances change. This is for 10 years. And so rather than have people look at chapter and verse and throw it in our faces, if we could at least point to that up front, I think that could be very helpful.
Mayor, Councilman Magazine, so you're thinking in the plan document itself, that right there in the introductory section, I'm sure we could come up with something there, or it'd be easy certainly to do in the executive summary, to do that at this point.
I'd rather have it in both places.
Yeah, and we can look at that. So, as we take action here if that's included, we can certainly do that. It'd be very easy to do.
Mayor, just to continue real quickly, I just think there's enough broad and general language in here that just about anything any council does, they could be hung with. I mean, because there's language about, preservation, language about development, language about characters of single-family residences, but yet we want to encourage multifamily as well. And again, I just think this is, a general plan that allows for mixed uses out here in the community, which we already have. And it does incorporate the strategic plan, and the strategic plan does put an emphasis on diversity of housing and trying to attract young professionals and diversity of housing, that kind of thing. So again, I just want to point these things out in terms of it's all in there.
And so, Mayor, if I may, real quick, Councilmember Sharon, very, very excellent points that you're making. So two things. One is going back to some of the fundamental statements, the vision statement, the overarching principle, taking things back there as much as possible is, okay, what are we really after as we're trying to sort out these different options that come before us is helpful. And then also it's why it's helpful to, I know this is a bad word or whatever, additional plans. Folks are taking the general plan and then doing the specific plan, such as the town center plan. Helps you translate then those general principles into specific needs in a specific area. Can be helpful going forward.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Last point, I was going to note that there were a lot of public comments and such about parks and recreational facilities out here, and suggested, improvements, modifications, et cetera. And as you note in the notes or in the plan itself, I mean, we are starting a Parks and Rec master plan that's going to have a lot of public input, and so that'll be a part of this whenever we finish that as well. So I just wanted to point that out, that people tend to concentrate, on the open areas, the washes, the parks, et cetera, and that's, while it's not directly discussed in here, it'll be covered in the Parks and Rec master plan that's forthcoming.
Thank you. Dennis?
Thank you, Mayor. Councilman Sharnow, you've made some excellent points, truly excellent points. If you go back to the original general plan that's now 10 years old and that we're going to be replacing, and you study it, it didn't even allow for mixed use. And it was, the councils in the last 10 years have been abused every time we've tried to go in and change the general plan, because as you rightfully point out, this is a general plan that we should be able to go in and change and manipulate and utilize for the betterment of the town of Fountain Hills. But it seems that every time we try to do that, we have to put our body armor on to go out in public. Excellent job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Anybody on the phone have a comment? Any questions? Well, I have some stuff. So I think that's a great plan. So do you want us, if we're seeing things like this, like say we want to put something about amendments or, how we can, we recognize this is a 10-year document and we might want to change things. And so if you want that in the executive summary and in the intro, are we going to make motions, or how should we do this? Or do you want to just take notes? Can we do them administratively?
Oh, Mayor, good questions. And again, maybe I do have a few more slides here in the presentation to touch on real quickly that will then maybe tie back into what you just asked.
Okay.
And so over these last months, as I mentioned before, we've accumulated the comments that have come in. We have put together the comment matrix that's part of the packet material that we sent out to you. It lists all those comments that were made and what our staff response is to it. Most of those were fairly minor tweaks to the plan, correcting some language, whatever. There were a few that were a little bit more substantive, such as adding the section on the brownfields that we agreed should happen. Question came up about the walkability and how well that was covered. Staff felt it and consultant had been covered adequately. We didn't make any changes there. Again, some of the changes in definitions to major and minor, that was brought up, and we made those changes. There's another comment about too much emphasis on financial needs and not enough of citizens. Again, we felt like that was covered well enough, and no changes were recommended there. When we were at the P&Z Commission, they found 2 typos that they pointed out that we're correcting. Had a few comments today in terms of a correction to the name of one of the founders from Cornelius Vanderbilt to Cornelius Vanderbilt Wood. We dropped that last name in there. Place with the Salt River Pima community was mentioned. We left out the word Pima, fixing that discussion about the Downtown Strategy Fund. It was correct, but not clearly worded, and so we've come up with some new wording that's clear. And so there are a few little changes like that we already have kind of on our list. if the council's ready to move for adoption this evening, if we could reference including those modifications in that, and also if the council's comfortable with us just coming up with the change that Councilmember Magazine mentioned, and if you want to just approve it subject to staff making those modifications, I think we could do that. We did build into the schedule, if you need to see those in the document, you actually have till your next meeting on June 2nd. We have to approve it by then to meet the requirement for getting this on the ballot. So whichever way the council is more comfortable with. Again, to me, it sounds like the changes are minor enough. If the council's comfortable with it, we could just make those changes. They're pretty clear.
Okay, so I'll say a few more things, and then, I like that, though, not having to do a motion, and then we'll ask for public comment, and then we'll close the hearing, right? And then we'll go ahead with that? Okay. So, to all of your point, it's definitely a reference, kind of a reference book, something for a guiding theme almost of Fountain Hills. I was trying to think what other cities might have, so if you were an agricultural city, your general plan would look totally different from here if you were, really manufacturing or very much of a city. So I think this is very apropos what you're saying. It's really what Fountain Hills has been about all these years. But when we talk about, well, what are we? If you can read the beginning of this and get a lot of information about what kind of town we have, so it's a reference, it's an overview, it's a theme. I like that it has to. I don't know the integration with the zoning ordinances, and then with our wonderful downtown area specific plans, and also I would assume SPAC and with Vision Fountain Hills, all of those things are integrated there. So I think it definitely, while we don't like mandates, I think it's really a really worthwhile thing for us to have. Every time you might feel like, what are we? Something like that, or like our budget book, looking at that helps define the town, and not to say you can't veer away. One of the problems, I think, with Daybreak, or one of the conversations had to do with whether it was a minor or a major amendment. I think the folks thought the acreage made it eligible to be major, and then, so that was something that I don't know if this helps make that clearer as we go further, but I think that was a fair question. Whereas I think making amendments and our ability to make amendments is definitely important to be in here, especially because it's a 10-year plan. One of the other ways I think it can come in handy, if that's a good word, is as we make other decisions. So soon we'll be having our report from the Intersection Safety Committee, and we're going to have some suggestions about safety. And I noticed that there's a lot about safety in here, and I forget what the term was about doing it beforehand. It had a little phrase to it, but that, you keep that in mind when you start talking about speeding. It does help to have something that is there as a guidance that everybody voted on. When we talk about light, so we not only just dark skies, but all of the lighting, or when we talk about preserving views, or we talk about signage. So that can be a guide. It doesn't mean you're not up here saying that this has to be what you have to do about everything, but it's a really a good picture of what many people for a lot of years have thought of when it comes to our community. It does mention being walkable, so I like that part. I probably wish it was a little bit more emphasized, but I think it's fine. We talk about infrastructure. It does talk about internet, and I wonder, Grady, we talked about having internet for the entire community being infrastructure. So I don't know if that's an aim or if that's something that's just out there, but especially now with the COVID virus has been really illustrating how bad it is for people who don't have a good internet or a good cell service. So I'm not sure if that's something that has to be changed, or if that's just something that we can take a look at and add as a goal, or because I know you do have some stuff in here about it. I didn't put the page down.
Mayor, I think that's a really good point what you're bringing up. I do know that has been a priority of the Strategic Planning Advisory Commission, and that's probably a better place for something like that, because it's really a specific item where they can try to work on trying to achieve that goal.
Okay, okay. Yeah, because it more and more seems like more an infrastructure item, almost just like roads are and electricity and everything else. Thank you so much for adding the brownfield stuff. I think you really did a very thorough job with that, and that we had a recent example. That tank is removed. That area is totally remediated. We have a couple other areas like that in town, so that's definitely an economic development tool that I'm so glad that was added. On page 29 in my book, I don't know that that's the same, they do mention school property, and I was wondering if we could put a little line in there. I talked a little bit to Aaron and Grady about it, to say that the school district property has restrictions on being, I think it's page 29, on how you can dispose of that, because instead of having it just look like a menu of land, of vacant land, it might do to say something about, it says to date there are no development plans, but it might, do you see it by any chance? It's number 7 on 29, page 29. If you can just put a line in there that says, I don't know, Aaron, you said in accordance with state statute or something, to just show that that's not something that's just there that can easily be disposed of or sold or whatever. Maybe we can add something like that.
Okay.
So you wrote that down. I think the housing options, absolutely still a goal. I know it's something that we don't have a lot of control of, but it's still a goal, so I'm glad that that's in there. Mike, you've been working with Valley Metro. We've been working very hard on this Prop 500. And I don't know that that's in here necessarily, or whether it has to be, but it's a 20-year plan. So it's definitely part of our general plan. I think it kind of overlaps in there. I don't know what your opinion was of that. If we needed to say anything specific about the reauthorization or our plans for specific roads, transit options here in Fountain Hills.
Mayor, I think that's probably, again, a little bit outside of what we'd normally consider in a general plan document such as this. Do have the section on the street network and talks about our need for that connectivity to the region. And so I think we have kind of covered it from that broad perspective, which I think can very easily then translate into those specific issues, such as Prop 500.
All right, thanks. And then on page 79, we talk about public safety. I mentioned this to Grady earlier, and I think that we can change this a little bit. It says continue to support the space needs of MCSO in Town Hall. It seems like MCSO has one sentence to start it, and then Rural Metro has another, to continue to support Rural Metro Corporation in the provision of fire protection. I guess my general question is anything in there preventing our ability to explore our own police and fire? Because that's something that we've been talking about, maybe studying in the next year or so. The number 2 particularly, if we could change that to continue to support our fire services or something rather than a specific corporation. And I think you did it with Republic. I think you were able to say, our waste management, which is now Republic. So I'd like to see you come up with something to make, to treat both of those the same, MCSO and Rural Metro, and also not, at least not make it look like we're tied to any one thing for 10 years going forward. I don't know. We came up with some language, but I don't remember what we said. But if you can bring that back. I think we can still vote on this, but this will just be on the list.
So under Goal 3, Policy 1, which refers to the county sheriff, and Policy 2, which refers to the rural metro, if we generalize them, to say that we are continuing to support the space needs for law enforcement.
Yeah, I don't really get why that's
to
there.
support fire services.
Yeah.
And leave it more general. That would be a very easy change if the
But why is that even in there, that little space thing? I mean, it's part of what we're doing, because it's a little bit confusing with B, which says a separate administrative district. I mean, we're in a district now, so what does that mean? We expect Fountain Hills to be its own district, or just that we're continuing to house them? So Might need a little clarity with that, what the motivation or what the intention was with that part of it. Right? Yeah, you get that? You get what I mean?
Mayor, I see what you're saying. Yeah, we can take a look at that. As we've kind of talked about, this is a general plan document that sets some goals based on what we know today. It doesn't mean tomorrow we're not going to come in here and have a great idea that says, well, no, our own police department or our own fire department is a better idea, and we move forward with that immediately, even though it says that in this plan. That's very easily done.
Well, and again, this goes back to a little bit what you were saying, if we said, look, we're going to look at, our own fire department or police department, well, no, you can't, because this says you will support rural metro. So just wanting to make that a little more general. And if you want, we can talk more about it, because then, again, we can get those incorporated, if it's not clear what I mean. I think that's it, just that. Oh, if we had the priorities, the way you have the timetables, would that be something that could be changed administratively, or like, say we look at something and it's really not, and then all of a sudden it's really important? We can change that?
Yes, that's specifically stated under the admin piece.
Okay. All right. Well, so does that seem okay, Aaron, to you, that we can still vote on this even though we had some changes and things like that?
Yeah.
You don't have a mic, sorry.
Yes,
Just give me the high sign. Okay, are there cards on this issue? Any speaker cards? No. So, council, do you have anything else to say before I close the hearing?
Did I misunderstand, or John say he had a couple more slides?
No, I think that we're down to the last one here, really, and you've really already kind of talked about it. We've got the matrix that summarizes all the items. P&Z's recommended approval. Staff is recommending approval of the plan and the resolution that sets the vote in November.
Oh, yeah, okay. So I'll close the hearing now, and then if there isn't anything else, we can take a motion, which would have to include
Mayor,
yes, sir.
before we do a motion, I think we should itemize the verbiage that you would like to have changed and put down what Mike is recommending, so we can actually, I would like to think we'd have to, in order to vote on it, we would have to be able to explain to John exactly the areas that you'd like to see changed, which I've written down, the school district property, you'd like to see that different verbiage there, rural metro, the sheriff's department, infrastructure, I think we struck that out, saying that that's really not part of what we're talking about. And then what I had written down for Mike was explaining this is a statement in the opening statement, the executive statement, explaining this is a general plan that can be changed by the vote of the council. Is that pretty much what you were thinking, Mike?
Yeah, I think Alan had even some broader ideas than that for opening, part of the opening of the document, so we can certainly massage that some more.
Okay.
So we could have a motion to accept it, including the provisions as discussed. Can we do something like that?
Sure, as discussed, as stated on the record.
Okay, it's on the record, so we can make a motion like that. Okay.
Liz, are you okay? Yeah. Okay.
Everybody on the phone okay? Everybody on board?
Yes.
Great.
Yes, Mayor.
Thank you. Can we get a motion?
Mayor, I move to approve Resolution 2020-01 as presented with the changes as discussed.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 No one's opposed, I don't think so. Any opposed?
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Thanks so much. It was Herculean, is that the word? Thank you on the phone. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Major and Council, and I'd like to say that it has been a pleasure to work with your staff and that this town has a wonderful staff.
Oh, thank you. We always like to hear that, and we appreciate them too. Okay, that was the big item. Our next item is awarding an annual landscape contract. Grady?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, Council. The item before you is award of a multi-year annual landscape contract to Brightview Landscape Services. Just to put this in perspective, this is the third largest of all of our contracts. You have public safety, which would be in order, MCSO, then rural metro. This is the next largest annualized contract that we have for services provided in the town. The company that would provide these services will provide our right-of-way landscaping services, our parks maintenance services, and our groundskeeping services. We have a brief report that will be given by Kevin Snipes, our park superintendent, on this. So, Mr. Snipes.
Hi there.
Thank you, Grady. Mayor, Council. So this is our landscape contract, as Grady had said. The new contract for the proposal was advertised in the Times and in the Business Gazette. I think we had 9 people that showed up for our mandatory meeting on the 11th of March. And of those, we had 4 different proposals that were dropped off. On the 7th of April, in reviewing those, we had a group of 5 different staff employees that are all somehow touched by the contract, between the right-of-ways, the parks, the washes, the facilities. And so with that group, we scored the proposals based off of several different criteria, their general information, their experience and qualifications, their key positions, their project approach, their project schedule, and the budget. And through doing that process, there was a possible scoring total of 500 points. The top scorer scored 474 points, and they were the highest score by 51 points. So it was a definite difference between our number 1 and our number 2. This is a contract that's really important to the town as far as our overall look. They are going to be doing the maintenance of all the right-of-ways along the road. They're going to do all the parks, mowing, major tree trimming, irrigation work. If we need to design an area and do that, they're able to do that as well. So they can do more than just the general maintenance of the week-to-week. The group that we are recommending as a staff is Brightview Landscape Services. The contract is for $388,012.10. The Brightview Landscape Services has been around since 1939, so they're not a new person on the block for sure. They're the largest landscape company in the United States. With that comes not only local people to answer our questions and deal with it, but they also have the national backing of if we need something major figured out, we know that we'll have a good solid group that'll be able to help us figure out what our issues are. Things that come to mind would be if we have a insect issue or, something where it's coming through and taking out a lot of trees or something like that, having a bigger group that's able to see a more national thing coming or what's going on, it makes it a lot easier to be able to fight those kind of issues. Their portfolio includes the city of Peoria, Glendale, Mesa, Anthem, AT&T Park, Bellagio. So they certainly are all over Arizona and have some big name places that everybody's heard of. So with that, their services will include design, development, maintenance, tree care, water management, all the things that is extremely important as far as taking care of our landscape and helping us out. So with that, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer those at this time.
Thank you so much. I called you Mike, sorry about that, Dennis. Looking right at you.
Kevin, is this a contract that can be extended for multiple years, or we have to go through it every year?
Right. Now, this one can be extended up to for 4 more years.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, now, Mike?
Thank you, Mayor.
I thought I got it right.
I note on the report, there's an additional $50,000 owner's allowance for emergency services. Is that something we had in the current contract?
We did not have it in the current one, and one of the things that I've kept running into over the years, and especially with it being a multi-departmental contract, is if we have something that comes up that's not foreseen, being able to jump on it and get something fixed in a hurry, this allows for that kind of action to take place. And if we don't need it, then it certainly will never be touched. So it's just one of those, when emergencies come up, being able to respond quickly and not have to get another contract to where that we, amendment to the contract to where that we can take care of things that need to be done.
So, for example, a big monsoon storm hits, tonight, and then, I know that, they're close by Glendale, Mesa, Peoria. Are they going to have resources to come like in the morning to help with an emergency like that? Or is that all on our street department? Or how does all that work in terms of?
Well, since we haven't started working with them, I wouldn't speak to that. I do have, there's 3 of their members that are here that we could certainly ask that question to if you'd like to.
I would like just to add to your point, Councilmember Charnell, we do have other emergency vendors that would be, in fact, we have a local company here that would help with really some of the heavy work that we would need. But clearly, to your point, parks typically get hit pretty hard when we have tree limbs go down and things like that. So that's a very good point. And I do think that they would be obligated to go get that cleaned up as soon as possible. But to your point, where are we in the pecking order, in terms of versus their other clients? But I will tell you everything that would be in the right of way in the streets and such, we have other vendors that we do rely on to help us with that.
Okay, it's good to know. And lastly, we've had some discussions at the retreat and so on about the median on Palisades Boulevard and how we're going to handle that. So I assume if this contract is issued, that we can have some more discussion, and this amount will absorb, maybe some additional work that might be needed on that median in terms of trying to keep it in better shape.
That would certainly be something that.
Again, that's just my comment. But.
It could be used in terms of the maintenance aspect of it. So if we believe that the public works staff will be able to do some of the enhancements themselves, but if they do any kind of vegetation or if there's any kind of irrigation that is not operating after it's put in or it's repaired, this company would be the ones that would be responsible for that.
Great. Alan?
I was going to raise the $50,000 contingency as well. Is that in the, excuse me, sorry, is that in the contract?
It is part of the contract, yes.
Is it left to their sole discretion in the contract?
No, it would be to our discretion if we needed to use it.
Okay.
It's on our side of the ledger. So in other words, they're not guaranteed that they're going to get that. So it's only work that we authorize that we give them direction to do.
Okay, and I certainly trust Kevin, but you're the one who controls the purse strings, so I would hope that both of you would be involved in that.
Thank you. Anyone on the phone have any questions or comments? No? Okay. Or do we have any speaker cards? No speaker cards. Okay, so if you're ready, someone could make a motion?
Yeah, with that, I'll move to award the annual landscape contract 2020-062 to Brightview Landscape Services, Inc.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for all your work. Next, we have an item that I will not be participating in. So it's just called the Fountain Hills Walk of Mayors, and looks like it's Justin's going to give us.
Actually,
Grady?
I'll be
Oh,
giving the
okay.
presentation. So I believe it was about 10
Thank you.
days ago or so, Councilmember Brown brought to my attention a request for having this be brought before the council tonight. He recognized that we've had other forms of recognition that we've had for past mayors. In the past, we have Sheridan Morgan Plaza on the Avenue. We also have the Wally Nichols Plaza. And he had indicated there were a couple council members, Art Tallis and also Councilmember Sherry LaCrone, that supported having a concept of a walk of mayors, which would be located on the linear park. And I will go ahead and turn it over to him because it was really his brainchild that you can probably explain to the council what you were thinking.
Absolutely. So after Sharon Morgan requested having the late Sharon Morgan being recognized before she passes away, and stood before us and I believe asked the question in just that manner, it really started me thinking that we currently have had 8 mayors in the town of Fountain Hills, and between being appointed by 4 different mayors to the Planning and Zoning Commission, I have directly worked with 3 of the mayors on council. So I have witnessed the abuse that is given to the mayors. The council gets beat up enough. I mean, you know, it just comes with the territory. But the mayor is up here being the leader in town hall day after day after day, taking care of us. And the folks that don't participate as a council member or planning and zoning, and they don't get to know and see the value of the mayors that lead this town day after day, may not understand what I'm trying to do. But I truly believe that any mayor that has been elected and has served the town of Fountain Hills should be recognized. And since we have the walk on the avenue that has niches that we can use, that I would like to see every mayor recognized somewhere in the town of Fountain Hills, and I see that as being a leader of a spot. I haven't discussed the naming of it. I haven't discussed the location of it. I'm just hoping that we can come together and agree that it's an idea that we should be looking at.
Vice Mayor?
Yes, Councilwoman LaCrone?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea, and it's a tradition that can certainly outlive all of us in our terms on the council. But to honor those who have been the head of a town and all that they do for the town is a fantastic idea.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. Does anyone else up here have any comments?
We have a walk of councilmen?
Walk of shame? Or,
Mayor, this is Dave.
Go ahead, Dave.
I appreciate Councilman Brown bringing this to the council's attention and everything. I have mixed emotions about naming things after people. I believe that people that make the ultimate sacrifice, especially military, I mean, Pat Tillman comes to mind, to name somebody or to name something after someone such as that, or someone who dedicates their whole entire life to a certain thing. I'm a little bit opposed to it being limited. If this is just going to be limited to just former mayors, I believe that all of us, but let me preface this with, in no way am I asking for anything to be named. So that's not where I'm going with this. I just think that limiting it to former mayors I believe that being a mayor of this town, former mayor and current mayor, as well as a council member of this town, completely sucks the life out of you. And we all know that, but that's what we signed up for. And so I would be opposed to this if it was just simply going to be for mayors. If it was civilians, or what I mean by civilians, I mean community members who have dedicated their life, or a majority of their life, to the improvement of Fountain Hills, be it whoever it is. I just don't believe, I'm not one for believing that because you're in elected office that you should have something named after you. If you want your name on something, get a personalized license plate. But if Councilman Brown is willing to be flexible on this, that it would include other people in the community or other people that could be put into this honored circle or whatever, I would be for it. But if we limit it just to the former mayor, or the current mayor, I'm opposed to it.
Okay, thanks, David. Councilman Magazine?
I'm concerned that if you go in that direction, it would be an incredibly hot potato. Who's going to make the selection? People are not going to like some of the selections. And in fact, leaders of our community are already recognized. At a dinner, which dinner is that?
The Lower Verde Valley River Hall of Fame?
Yeah, the Hall of Fame. We have many individuals, past and present, who have been installed into the Hall of Fame, and that's tremendous recognition.
I think, Dennis, I would ask, I agree with the general concept of perhaps recognizing all the mayors in some fashion. Are you married to the Avenue concept just because the two plazas were already named for two different mayors? Or, I think I'm not opposed to honoring just the mayors, but perhaps I would like, if we're going to have staff do this, then it's not going to cost any money, correct? They're going to come back with just
So
a
yeah,
staff report?
tonight what we're trying to do is seek direction. So before you, the motion would be really to direct staff to develop a conceptual design, an estimated cost of a walk of mayors or some other form of recognition. We'd come back to you at a later date, and you would then at that point make a decision.
Alan?
You just said, you added a phrase that said, or other form of recognition, which I wasn't aware of.
Well, as an example, before you is the walk of mayors, but in the suggested motion, because I figured that there might be some other ideas that might come out tonight, the suggested motion says to direct staff to develop a conceptual design and estimated cost of a walk of mayors and or other possible concepts for town council consideration, because there might have been some other discussion that happened tonight.
I agree with that.
Dennis?
Vice Mayor, if I may.
Yes, Dennis?
That is exactly the conversation that I think we should have. I think that the leaders of our town should be recognized. I think they carry a special torch. And no, I am not dyed in the wool to just the Avenue, not at all.
Okay.
I think that we could have a meeting on this. I think staff could bring us recommendations, but I'm not married to that at all.
All right, well, thanks for that input, because I don't have any specific ideas or alternatives, but I think we should, like you said, explore some ideas, because I think whatever we do, it has to obviously accommodate all 8 mayors we've already had or have, and it needs to accommodate the future ones, So it has to be some kind of recognition that, that accommodates the future mayors as well, I think. So whether it's here within Town Hall or outside in the circle or somewhere, I think I'd be in favor of looking at something, some options other than just the walk type concept, but that's my input.
And that's great input. I used that simply because that's where Sharon was recognized.
Sure.
And that was the only thought pattern behind that.
Yeah.
I'm not married to that at all. I think that staff, if it's all right, I'll just make a motion to let staff bring something to us.
Yeah, is there any other discussion from anyone on the phone? If not,
Just to clarify with that, Dennis, just to clarify, would that include other people that would be added to this that could be available or could be nominated for this other than mayors?
Right now, I'm going to stay with the leaders of the town, as I point out, that have carried the torch for the town. And I would say the answer to that question would be left up to the future councils. But at this point in time, I would say just the lead of the town.
and Dennis, are you contemplating whatever we end up doing would recognize each individual equally in terms of however the final format is in terms of, you know?
I wouldn't want to get into the weeds and start separating.
Right.
You know, we can go back and look at the trials and tribulations of Wally Nichols and Jay when they had to take the staff from 150 to 50, and then we can look at, you know, all the pluses from the mayors. But I think just being recognized as a mayor of Fountain Hills would be more than adequate.
Yeah, I think, I don't think you want to get into policies and politics and,
Not at all.
you know, like accomplishments or negative things, you know, so I think whatever we do needs to be a equal format in terms of the recognition, so.
Totally agree.
Okay.
Mike?
Go ahead, David.
So what we're voting on tonight is not actually implementing this. It's just directing town staff to come to us with some type of presentation or with some type of ideas, and then we would later vote on if we're going to approve it or not, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. My understanding, it's just a conceptual thing. Staff is looking for direction to proceed or not, so yeah.
What's this going to cost?
That would be accurate, yeah, and bring back some type of cost depending on the options options that they present.
Now, is the study of them trying to conceptualize what this is going to cost us anything?
Right, and no cost right now, David.
Okay.
All right, Dennis?
Yes, thank you, Vice Mayor. Move to direct staff to develop a conceptual design, an estimate cost of Walk of Mayors, and other possible concepts for town council consideration and approval at a future town council meeting.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Councilwoman LaCrone seconded. With all that, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Motion passes 6-0.
All right, thank you, Liz.
Thank you, Liz. Next, we are talking about air conditioning. Justin?
You can turn it up a little bit.
Yeah, now.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Council members, we're here tonight to once again ask for some money for some of our dated equipment. In this particular case, it's 2 compressors that operate our number 2 chiller. They are approximately 20 years old, and as you can see from the staff report, have taken the majority of the load to cool the town's facilities during, the heated days and nights, and also provide conditioning during the cooler months as well. We don't take this lightly, and we have certainly done our due diligence as a whole. The facility supervisor, Raymond Reese, and myself, along with the town manager, we have certainly reviewed options. We have a long-standing good relationship with this particular contractor, which is Bel Air, and they have managed to help us keep these things moving and operating at what we believe is the fairest price available, and in some cases it's day and or night and weekends and holidays that this group comes out. The proposal before you tonight includes the replacement of these 2 units that are very delicate in nature and require being shipped back to their headquarters on the East Coast. As part of that, they are giving us a $1,500 per compressor core fee. So our overall price is being reduced by $3,000, which is reflected in the total dollar amount. Also, what we are asking for tonight is some additional money towards their contract for some unexpected work that we had spent budgeted monies on, which now leaves us a little bit closer to the shallow end of our funding should we have any uncertain or unknown issues arise as we approach the end of the fiscal year here and the beginning of the new year while we wait for budgets to proceed. With that said, I will do my best to answer any questions related to this item that I can.
Thank you. Any questions? Dennis?
Thank you. So this was brought to us by Raymond Reese probably, he started notifying us of this probably 6 years ago.
Madam Mayor, council member, that is correct.
And he has put bubble gum and tape on it for that many years, keeping it going.
That is correct.
Do we have the money appropriated?
Indeed, we do have the funding available.
And it's coming from?
It's coming from facilities replacement, sir.
So we have been accumulating it for this very reason.
We do have funding in there for facilities replacement, and some of it is for unforeseen, and some of it is for maintenance that is, well, past due, to be fair.
Well, it's a shame we couldn't have got all this done. We could have just shut Town Hall completely down over the last 2 months and wouldn't even had a cooling bill, huh? So that answers my questions, Justin. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mike?
Yes, thank you. Justin, just real quick, could you just summarize briefly, I mean, Town Hall, Community Center, and I believe the library, well, I'm not sure, but, you know, it's a pretty complex system, computerized. I mean, so this space right here really isn't cooled to the degree that it is right now during off hours. And could you just talk a little bit about how the system works in terms of the timing and the weekends and that kind of thing? I mean,
Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, so the Town Hall campus is controlled separately from all the other buildings, and inside of the Town Hall itself, there are several different departments and compartments that are conditioned for their use. A good example is the council chambers, when not in use, are held at a basic temperature that doesn't require us to heat it or cool it substantially when it is needed. Although, and with that system, it's not an automated, it's a programmable system. So prior to tonight's meeting, as the temperature was rising through the day, the temperature was slowly but surely decreased in this area to make it more manageable. It's the same goes for any of the larger meeting spaces in Town Hall. There are exceptions to that. We have a minimal amount of control for each of the individual offices that have doors that allow us to raise or lower the temperature just a little bit. That also applies to each one of the larger meeting rooms and the smaller offices, very similar at the community center. Now, we do have special requests where we can send a maintenance request to facilities, and it's a real-time request where they can actually pull it up on their computer screen and see the entire operation for each of the buildings individually or as a whole operating to see what motors are running, what compressors are running, what the ambient temperature is, what the room temperature is. It is a pretty comprehensive and complicated system. And this particular group right here that we have been working with, they also have access to that so they can see it in real time. So each individual building is separate, but yet on the same system. And then each of the larger meeting rooms and the smaller offices are individual components of this system.
so my point being, we have a pretty efficient system that operates well, and this is all part of that system and just helps the efficiency.
Correct.
Why didn't you just say that? Alan.
I just want to take a minute and compliment Justin and his staff. I mean, he comes before us almost every meeting. And whether it's infrastructure issues or roads or whatever it is, and I can't even begin to imagine how much work goes into the preparation before you come before us. In terms of getting contracts, trying to figure out budgets, drawings and all of the intricacies of basically running the infrastructure of the town. And so I just want to take a minute and compliment you and say I think you do a terrific job.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Magazine, thank you.
Yay.
On behalf of the entire staff, not just myself, but the persons in this room and in the buildings and at home, we agree. We do our best to try and bring forth what is best for the entire community, including these buildings and their grounds.
Thank you. Anyone on the phone have a comment? No? Do we have any speaker cards? Can I get a motion, please?
I'll go ahead and move to approve amendment number 1 with Bel Air Mechanical for $81,000 for HVAC maintenance and repairs and the required budget transfer.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you very much. And you're up next too, aren't you?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes, Mayor and Council, I'm just going to make some introductory remarks before Justin gets started. So the council recall that we had a high priority capital project, which was the shoulder widening of Fountain Hills Boulevard. That took place last summer. And due to some issues with some of the utilities, we ran into some unanticipated issues where we had to redesign what we were originally planning on doing, which cost more money, ended up being funded primarily through the federal funding that we received from MAG. Anyways, it ended up we ended up having the grant funding almost exhausted just for one side of the road. It was never anticipated that there wasn't enough money to do both sides. I'm going to turn it over to Justin, who we've been trying to get some answers from ADOT, who was the project manager of this project, to give us some additional clarity as to where we go from here. And I'll turn it over to Justin, who's going to speak a little bit on that topic.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, council members, we're all very familiar with this project. It took years and years of planning, and we did receive the majority, a little bit more than 90% of this funding through CMAQ. Whenever you receive that type of federal grant funding, ADOT is the administrator for that and also involved in the plan review, the bidding, and the management of the project. It's a long, drawn-out process, and I'm going to try and shrink it down a little bit here where we can all have a better understanding of how it works. We received the funding. We got the project designed. We selected and paid for the engineering firm. ADOT did the design. As part of that process, when we reach a certain percentage in the plans, 60 to 90% there, plans are sent out to all of the utility companies that are identified that may or may not be impacted. And ADOT asks, or the engineering firm asks, that they respond to the letters, and any conflicts that may or may not arise as part of this project be resolved. We did receive all of those. We recorded all of those. The stuff that was agreed to be moved, which was minor in regards to EPCOR and CenturyLink, we agreed to. The project was bid. We got to work. The contractor, as part of their due diligence, discovered shallow utilities. Due to the challenges of the utilities being SRP and the fact that they would likely have exercised their prior rights that was granted to them from the former road districts, it would have substantially delayed the project. We would have most likely lost our federal aid funding, and it would have cost the town as a whole, outside of the grant funding, a considerable amount of money. So we decided to go with a redesign and eliminate drainage ditches and replace it with curb and gutter. As these negotiations were taking place and numbers were being tossed around, a number was tossed up that would allow the contractor to complete this work with these changes and stay within the maximum allowable amount for an increase of 10% under the state's guidelines. It was agreed to. The contractor went to work. During that process, unfortunately, some unforeseen dollars that go through ADOT were not recognized, and it put it above the 10% amount. ADOT then, by revised statute, has to cancel the project. In doing so, there is an Arizona revised statute that protects the contractor in regards to the convenience clause, which entitles them to the lion's share of the original monies, excluding labor and the materials that are not already on site. We believe, but we do not know yet to date, that that has been settled. We've received an email, but we do not have anything from the comptroller, as the project has not been closed out, that we still have funding on balance there based on the recapitulation sheets that Grady and I have gone over, but we do not know that total amount. So what we're here tonight to do is to give you an update on that and offer some options. As a result of value engineering on other capital projects and savings for projects that we've done in-house to reduce the overall cost, we do have some funding in the capital project. We do have some one-time money from HERF that we can consider using. So if you would like to go forward, there's a couple of options. One of them is a direct select of the contractor that was already building the project and is very familiar with it. They have given us a number. It's a relatively high number if you consider the original one. The next option is that we take the documents that were approved and release it for public bid, sealed bid, asking people to propose a cost to construct the second half. Those are the two options we have, and those are the funding options that we have. We're here tonight to keep the project in the forefront, share with you the stuff we know. I know that I'm certainly frustrated with the amount of time it takes for the project to close out, as is Mr. Miller. We've struggled amongst ourselves as to how to proceed and how to bring this back and keep the conversation alive. And this is what we've settled on tonight. And it's challenging, to say the least, that we would ask you again to reauthorize funding for something that you've already agreed to in the past. Mind you, at this juncture, it'll be considerably more on our part, as there is no more grant funding available for this project. With that exhaustive and somewhat complicated explanation, I'll do my best to answer questions.
Thank you. Questions? Alan?
Justin, if we put it out to bid, do you think the difference in price between what we've been offered and what might come in would be significant or incidental?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Magazine, it's a risk, and I'm going to share my opinion, and that's just what it is. Right now, the market is up and down, and there's some volatilities in it. I believe that if we put it out to public bid, we stand a better chance of getting a better price because of the competition that's available and the commodities market. Let's just say it's unstable. And so I believe it's in the best interest of this community that we would go to public bid, so we would have options at that point. It does not mean that if we decide to go to public bid that we have to select them and spend X dollars, whatever that is. It at least gives us an opportunity to see what the options are in regards to the funding.
Given our financial condition, I certainly would take that recommendation.
Mike?
Justin, what's the time difference between option A and option B?
Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, the time constraints are really minimal. So it's going to be a couple of months no matter what we do. We would not come back with it until the fall. Probably September is whenever we would have everything ready, because we have a bid package ready. We would just simply need to advertise it. But even if we decided to go with a direct select, we certainly, in my opinion, may not be ready before the council recesses for the summer to make sure that we have everything in line based on the communication from tonight. So it would most likely be in the fall when we would be discussing award.
Dennis?
Thank you. Director, I too would say let's put her on the streets and see what we come up with. But we can't even put her on the streets until we close out the first phase, can we?
Madam Mayor and Council Member, the first phase in regards to ADOT and the federal funding is closed. So that section is not directly tied to this section with the exception of the town owns it. So ADOT and the federal funding would have no involvement in us moving forward. Our strings have been severed there with the exception of the closeout documents that will explain to us where the money went and how much of it is remaining.
And I just want to dovetail onto Councilmember Brown's comments. We're going to get our money back. There's no issue about that. And it's pretty common for us when we engage in any of these projects where we're using federal money and ADOT is the administrator and project manager of these projects. Any of our remaining funds, we've had it take sometimes 18 to 24 months before we actually get a refund. And we keep putting a lot of pressure on ADOT, so I know it's not going to go away. And we will get that money back. Right now, the minimum amount based on the project manager and the communications that's in the report is about $70,000. We think it's considerably higher. And so the point is, when we do get that money back, it's going to be refunded, and it's going to go right back into the capital fund.
So if we go through this entire process of rebidding it, will we have the funds to do it if the numbers come in correctly?
We will actually. Justin was suggesting the use of the street fund, which is HERF funded. But I also think that with the recent proceeds that we received from the fire station, I mean, there's money there. The council's also made it very clear that there were a number of projects that were high priority enough. They wanted to see how the economy was proceeding before they wanted to commit to those projects. So I do believe we have the funding in the capital fund to do this.
One more question. Will this take away from repairing streets throughout the rest of the town? Will we be using HERF money that would customarily help fund the repair of streets?
My preference wouldn't be to use the HERF money. My preference would be to try to use the capital fund. Justin was trying to be expedient because the money's there and he knows we'll have it. But from my perspective, I'd rather use the capital fund.
I agree with that.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Any questions from council on the phone? No? Oh, do we have any speaker cards? No. If there's nothing else, I'll take a motion, please.
I move to move it forward.
And moving it forward means with the bid. Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? I think it's everyone.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Thanks again, everyone. We go right to our last item, which is council discussion direction to town manager. Anything you'd like to add? Take a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Aye.
Thank you. Good night.